Happy New Year to everyone. This is another adoption episode. If you're an adoptee listening to this, you already know where this is going. If you're listening to this and you're not adopted, congratulations. You're probably here for the same reason as the rest of us, because you were also left behind in some way. This started with me sitting on my phone, scrolling through Facebook during the holidays. All because I was happy this holiday season, and apparently I needed to ruin it. I apparently needed something to make my mental health worse. And if you're looking for a fast, efficient way to spiral quietly, Facebook during the holidays is basically a public service. It's the usual feed: family photos, matching pajamas, traditions, inside jokes that have apparently been running for decades without interruption. End-of-year posts about belonging, legacy, and togetherness. Just scrolling through it like, wow, look at all these people who came fully assembled. I was sitting there staring at the Christmas tree that was still up, with the new calendars already out for the year, and it finally clicked how isolating adoption really is. Not the dramatic version people expect, the quiet version, the kind where nothing is obviously wrong, but everything feels off. Adoption doesn't just separate you from people, it separates you from structure, from place, from knowing where you land without having to constantly check. And that kind of isolation doesn't always feel like loneliness. Sometimes it feels like hyper-awareness, like monitoring, like managing, like never fully relaxing inside family. Because you're always measuring whether you still belong there. As an adoptee, I don't just experience family dynamics. I manage them. I track them. I monitor proximity and availability like it's a full-time job. I pay attention to who calls, who doesn't, how long I'm allowed to stay connected, and how quickly I'm expected to disappear again. Here's the uncomfortable part I'm working through. No one is forcing me to stay connected. I'm the one holding on, in the name of family. In the name of loyalty. In the name of gratitude. In the name of not wanting to vanish. Because when you're adopted, distance doesn't feel neutral. Distance feels like erasure. So this episode isn't about blaming anyone. It's about pattern recognition. It's about learning from lived experience and asking a real question that adoptees rarely say out loud. At what point does holding on stop being survival and start being self-abandonment? That's what I'm unpacking here. And if this gets you, adoptee or not, I want to hear how this shows up in your life too. How you manage family, how you stay connected, how you decide when enough is enough. I'm going to be blunt, because anything softer will just keep me stuck, and this is the part that rarely gets said clearly. What looks like overthinking, minimizing, or holding on too long in adoptees isn't a personality flaw. It's survival. It always has been. Adoption is sold as being chosen. Chosen family, chosen love, chosen belonging. And on paper, that sounds comforting. In reality, it quietly imprisons the adopted child. Because if you were chosen, then you're supposed to fit. You're supposed to be grateful. You're supposed to adapt. And if you don't, the problem must be you. What no one talks about is that adoption starts with being left behind. That's the origin point. So from day one, the adopted child learns that belonging is conditional and fragile. You don't rest inside family. You manage it. You maintain it. You make sure you're still acceptable enough to stay. That's not love. That's survival behavior dressed up as loyalty. Here's where the logic really breaks down. Adoption often tries to take someone who is shaped in one environment and force them into another, then calls it family and expects harmony. It's like putting a zebra in a field of horses and acting shocked when something goes wrong. They might look similar from far away, but they are not built for the same terrain, the same rules, or the same instincts. One of them will have to die in that environment, and it's never the environment, so the adoptee adapts. We suppress instincts. We override discomfort. We minimize conflict. We tell ourselves nothing bad happened, because if nothing bad happened, then we can stay. If we can stay, then we haven't been abandoned again. This is why adoptees get stuck minimizing harm. Not because we're unaware, but because our nervous system learned very early that questioning the structure is dangerous. Survival depends on fitting in, even when the fit is slowly destroying us. That's the trap. The family doesn't have to be cruel. The system doesn't have to be loud. The damage happens quietly, through adaptation that never ends. And if this resonates, it's not because you're dramatic. It's because your survival wiring is still running a program it never got permission to shut down. Once you see that what you've been calling loyalty is actually survival, the next part is unavoidable. Survival has an endpoint. It is not meant to be permanent. And when survival outlives the situation that required it, it starts doing damage instead of protection. This is where letting go gets misunderstood. Letting go isn't about giving up. It isn't about being cold, detached, or suddenly healed. It's about recognizing that the conditions you adapted to no longer exist in the same way, even though your body is still responding as if they do. Survival keeps asking you to stay alert. Letting go is what tells your nervous system it no longer has to be. For adoptees, this is especially difficult, because letting go feels identical to abandonment. On a body level, distance still reads as danger. Silence still feels like erasure. So even when a family structure is clearly incompatible, even when you can see that there is no place being made for you, your instinct is to hold on harder, not because it works, but because it's familiar. This is where the chosen family narrative quietly collapses. Because if you were chosen, then leaving feels like failure. It feels like you didn't try hard enough, didn't adapt well enough, didn't earn your place. But the truth is simpler and more uncomfortable. You were adapting to something that was never built to hold you. And no amount of effort was ever going to change that. Letting go doesn't require anger or confrontation. It doesn't require anyone to be wrong. It doesn't require proof. It only requires honesty. The honesty that says, this structure costs me more than it gives. The honesty that says, staying is no longer survival. It's self-abandonment. This is also why letting go feels so final, even when it isn't. When you've spent your life maintaining connection to avoid disappearing, stepping back feels like erasing yourself. But letting go is not erasure. It's release. It's choosing to stop performing attachment for systems that can't meet you where you are. Letting go is not about cutting people off. It's about cutting yourself loose from a role you were never meant to play forever. It's about allowing survival to stand down so something else can take its place. And that's the shift, from surviving inside structures that don't fit to no longer organizing your life around staying. This is usually the part people skip, because it's inconvenient and doesn't photograph well. Letting go sounds clean in theory, but in practice it comes with grief. Not the dramatic kind, the stupid, quiet kind. The kind where you're mourning something that technically never existed, which makes explaining it to anyone else a complete waste of time. Because what are you supposed to say? I'm grieving the family I kept trying to belong to. The version where I finally fit. The version where all that adapting paid off. The version where survival turned into safety. Turns out, that version was imaginary, but the grief is still real, which is rude. Adoptees get stuck here because we confuse grief with failure. If letting go hurts, then maybe it means we did something wrong. Maybe we gave up too soon. Maybe we should have tried harder. This is where the brain starts bargaining like it's negotiating a hostage situation. Just one more adjustment, one more conversation, one more attempt to explain ourselves clearly enough that the structure magically reshapes around us. It doesn't, and this is where the anger shows up. Not the explosive kind, the competent kind, the kind that finally says, I am tired of organizing my life around not being erased. I am tired of calling endurance a virtue. I'm tired of pretending this is neutral when my body has been telling me otherwise for years. Here's the part that really messes with adoptees. Choosing to let go doesn't feel empowering. It feels like jumping without a net. It feels like choosing absence over familiar discomfort. It feels like you're breaking some unspoken rule that everyone else seems perfectly comfortable benefiting from. But staying doesn't make you noble. It just makes you tired. Letting go isn't a dramatic exit. It's boring. It's anticlimactic. It's deciding not to keep touching the hot stove just to confirm it's still hot. It's choosing now instead of forever. It's saying, I don't need to solve this today, but I'm done sacrificing myself to it. And yes, fear comes with that. Fear of disappearing. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of confirming what you were trying so hard not to believe. That this family was never going to be the place you rested. But here's the part no one warns you about. Once you stop holding on, your nervous system eventually notices. And when it does, something strange happens. You don't collapse. You don't vanish. You don't die. You just get quieter. Not the shrinking kind, the settled kind. This isn't about winning. It's not about being right. It's about being done. Done negotiating for space. Done mistaking survival for love. Done calling self-abandonment loyalty. Letting it go doesn't make you heartless. It makes you honest. And honestly, that's overdue. If you're sitting here wondering what you're supposed to do with all of this, the answer is intentionally boring. There is no dramatic next step, no announcement, no confrontation, no final speech that makes everything make sense. You're allowed to let go quietly. You're allowed to stop reaching without explaining why. You're allowed to take space without turning it into a philosophy. You're allowed to choose distance without making it permanent or symbolic or morally impressive. Letting go doesn't have to look like strength. It can look like indifference. It can look like silence. It can look like deciding you don't need to keep revisiting the same emotional math, hoping it will finally add up. You don't have to replace what you let go of right away. You don't have to know what comes next. You don't even have to feel good about it. Grief and relief are allowed to coexist. So is anger and calm. So is doubt and certainty, sometimes in the same hour. If you're adopted, or if you were left behind in some other way, you were trained to hold on long past the point of usefulness. This isn't about learning how to love better. It's about learning when to stop surviving. So no, this isn't advice. It's permission. You're allowed to let it go. Not forever, not dramatically. Just now.